Alright, so today we're going to go a little bit into the electrolysis again. I did a brief video of the basic setup, which you can see it's on YouTube. Just go through the channel and you'll find the setup. So today, I don't know if you can see this, we got a flat iron. And I used this before, and a perfect example of what happens when you don't preserve it with wax afterwards is it'll re-rust. This is a prime example. This is the same exact thing that I used in my setup video. I went ahead and put the drill back into it, reopened up that hole, put a screw back into it. That's going to be my lead for the electrolysis unit. Now, the flat iron itself, the bottom's still okay. You know, you can flake off some of this hardcore rust. It doesn't really matter because it's going to come off in the solution anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick what I use for my solution. A lot of people will use all kinds of stuff. The best thing that works for me is simple baking soda. Just pure baking soda. Not baking powder. You can get washing soda, which is maybe a little bit better. But baking soda is pretty much the same thing. And what you're looking for in your solution, let me see if it's got, yeah, right there. I don't know if you can see that. It says, sorry, my Siri was about to dial somebody. It says Sodium Bicarbonate, 100%. Don't get any kind of mix, you want 100%. This is the best stuff you can get right here. It looks like laundry detergent. Just granule. Now I've got about maybe 2 gallons in there. In that bucket, about 2 gallons of water. And the beauty about electrolysis is your solution never dies, okay? You can leave the water in there and keep using it until the water evaporates, then you're going to be left with a powder residue. Believe it or not, you could probably reuse that powdered residue after the water goes out, but I went ahead and cleaned my bowl. You can never have too much, so about a 1/4 cup just goes right on in there. That's all I do. And just a quick example, you can even make a small electrolysis unit. Plastic cup, 1 rebar, there's your leads, you're ready to go. Simple as that. You can clamp onto this, straight to the rebar, and there's your negative. So electrolysis units don't have to be prescribed setup. Now, the next thing I do is I take my leader cable. This is going to go onto what I'm going to do is make sure that I hook these up properly. Remember, if you reverse the polarity on this, you're actually going to eat away at your cathodes instead of your device. So now for me, this is not plugged in, by the way. Safety first, always safety first. Double check, make sure it's not plugged in. I'm on a 12 volt. You can do 6 volts. 6 volts is slower. I'll start out at 6. Let's try that. We'll start out at 6. And you don't want to use an automatic battery charger either, because those will have a tendency to stop when it thinks it's charged, which will be almost instantaneously. So we've got it plugged in, and we should start seeing some bubbles sometime soon here. Make note of that watercolor too. Alright. You probably can't hear it, but there are bubbles. It's starting to sizzle. I don't know if you can see that, but there are bubbles. So it's doing its job. And we'll come back to it in a little bit. Alright, so we went ahead and shut the water off, the power off. And just for safety's sake, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect here, even though the power is shut off and the device is unplugged. You never can be too safe. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up and see what we got going on. There's a little bit more doing on there, but notice how it's turned black and it's not rusty. That means it's doing its job. So at this point, this has been in there probably maybe a couple hours. Alright, so this is the final piece. Now that rust that you see there, that is actually just pits in the metal. You could probably get some of that off, but really I kind of like it looking rustic and old. That's the top part. Same goes for this. See that discoloration? It's not just necessarily black when it comes out. There are some pieces here that could flake off. Basically what you do is you take a nylon brush to this and get all these little flakes and stuff to come off. When I'm drying it, I actually take a paper towel and just rough it up real good and let that just kind of take care of most of it. And today I'm actually going to do a little experiment. Most people recommend that you take a hot wax, and put this, just let your relics sit in hot wax and coat. You take them out and buffer them, buff them up and dull the sheen on it. I'm actually going to take some paraffin wax. This is Gulf wax, and I'm going to rub it on here. I'm going to take a heat gun and I'm just going to melt. Since I'm only doing the one piece, it would make no sense melting 5 pounds of paraffin in a turkey fryer or pot or on the grill or whatever for this one unit. So I'm going to actually try a new experiment that I've never tried before, and that is basically going to rub this on, take the heat gun, melt the wax, and then continue on to the next side and see how well that holds up. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get started on this, and I'm going to take the wax get it in all around this. Take the heat gun. Okay, so this right now is extremely hot. I would not touch that for at least a good 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes. It actually gets hot enough that you can wipe the wax on it, and the wax and the ball of wax will melt as it's touching. It's kind of similar to soldering, but using wax. So that sheen that's on there, when that dries, we're going to take it and buff it up. We'll flip it over and we'll get the bottom side later. And we're going to see how that holds up versus dumping this in a bucket of hot wax. This is also a little bit safer in terms of having wet metal objects going into a hot wax bath, because you can get explosions that way, and this way it's subtle. The heat the dry heat that's being blown onto it actually helps evaporate the water quicker if there is any water, and you don't have any worries about popping and splashing when the water meets the wax. In this particular case, I'm not going to touch it yet because I can still feel the heat coming off of it. It's a little bit more laborious but the outcome I think is going to be pretty close to the same. Now, if you have intricate pieces and you don't want to take the time, I would save them all until you have a day to do all of them at once in a hot wax bath. Alright, well, it's all done. Let me show you the result here. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a finished piece. And I'm pretty happy with that experiment. So now I can do little pieces one by one as necessary. This piece was found about 8 inches underground. We are in Texas, so that's why there's a star here. I'm most willing to bet the old post used to be right here. Now with the hole, you can take an old grease pencil or something like that and fill it up, or some sort of wood putty or silicone or whatever you want. This isn't gonna bother me, it's just gonna be a personal display piece. But normally I'll take a piece of grease pencil or something like that, put it in there, break it off, smooth it out, wax over it, and it stays in place. Now I'm not gonna take a nylon brush to this. Instead, what I'm gonna do is just take a paper towel, and I'm just gonna rub it. And I already did the bottom, as you may well remember. And basically the shiny points, you just rub it and it comes off. Takes that high gloss off. Not too worried about the bottom, because it'll probably sit up in the display like that. Alright, here's the final product. Got it buffed down a little bit. Took most of the sheen off. I do like a little sheen on there, but notice those rusty points that were present earlier have been waxed over and they've darkened up, so I'm not too worried about the rust coming back now, because this has been finally preserved in paraffin wax. Again, I use Gulf wax for this. I mean, you can research, there's probably beeswax and stuff you can use, but Gulf wax was cheap. I found it at Walmart. It's like 5 pounds for $3 or something. So anyway, I appreciate you watching. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe,